Now, the reason that I am here is to give you an update from the last time I was here. The last time that I was here at the Congress, I tried to provide a viewpoint of the context for diversity and inclusion in the United States and what we plan to do with regard to adapting the Athena Swan effort for U.S. institutions. And pretty much that's essentially what I'm going to talk about, basically what we have done in that interim period. But I'm not just going to talk about that because a lot has changed in that interim period in the U.S., and I have to provide some new context. So I want to begin in 1999. Something called the Hopkins Report came out at MIT. Nancy and the senior women, full professors all in the College of Science, had uncovered what they had always suspected. And that was that there were real differences that they experienced as senior women that were being experienced by the men, junior and senior. So if you think about someone who's gotten to that level in science in the US, you should think that they would feel that they had it made. So what was the problem? Maybe I should say, what wasn't the problem? They received less space, they received less money, they received less respect, they received less recognition, they were more invisible. All kinds of issues that really reflect what we know to be the case within the science community writ large. Excessive hierarchy and uncontrolled abuse of power. So, how do you take on a culture and a system like that? In our case, we just don't feel that you can just try to put an intervention in place. It's not going to work. We've done interventions. I actually went to AAAS over 40 years ago to look at intervention programs. And we've been doing interventions off and on for even before that period of time. So what does it really take to change a system and to change a culture? So you began to look around and say, where has that been effectively accomplished in other circumstances? Well, obviously, Athena Swan basically stands out as a 13-year experiment that has changed a lot about the STEM fields and institutions and departments within the UK and beyond. But I think that even more important is to look beyond just the things that are like ours and see where have there been larger scale movements. One of the places that I would point out in terms of a large scale movement is the LEED system, which has totally transformed design and building construction. It has made sustainability a really attractive thing in a building that can in fact lead to, excuse the pun, more higher rents because it's more desirable space and all kinds of incentives like this. So again, how do we begin to change a system? Now, I remember I said that the context has changed within the United States as well. Recently, the National Science Foundation has issued new requirements for grants that affect the behavior of PIs insofar as needing to report to the foundation if in fact it has been determined that someone has been placed on administrative leave. So around harassment or bias, that's a major change, because all of a sudden it's not just the diversity office that has to pay attention to it, but the research office. Now you're getting into the guts of the organization. Recently also, the National Academy of Sciences, and along with the National Academy of Engineering and National Academy of Medicine, issued a report on the research base that surrounds sexual harassment of women. This has gotten a lot of pickup, a lot of attention throughout the entire infrastructure for science, including within my own organization and other scientific professional societies. Within our organization, the Council of AAAS, in a special call meeting, actually established policies whereby there could be revocation of elected fellow status. Now, under conditions of misconduct, breaches of ethics, including sexual harassment. Now, the reason that this is important is that if you look at the Academy study, and it tells you why has harassment been so persistent, and one of the major features is that the absence of consequences. It is tolerated. Well, all of a sudden, when it isn't tolerated, you're in a different place. And I think that this kind of change with regard to the circumstances really begins to help us understand what we're dealing with, a different time around the issues of harassment and bias. Not just Me Too, but the science community has stepped up. The AGU, the American Geophysical Union, has put forward some very forward-looking rules around what it considers ethics. There is a consortium of societies that is being formed to look at how we can go about this together in terms of prevention. And then there is, as I mentioned, the NSF, and now there's also legislation that has been introduced. So we began this journey for Sea Change, STEM Equity Achievement. We began this journey a couple of years ago, but it has taken a while to really kind of get our footing, because this is a really, really complex issue. And I hope you understand the scope of what we are dealing with in the US. Whereas in Athena Swan, you're looking at maybe hundreds of institutions. In the US, we have over 4,000. Now, that's a non-trivial issue. And in addition to that, we aren't just looking at the question of institution-level reviews, but also of department-level reviews, because organizational change basically argues that you need to do top-down and bottom-up at the same time. We are looking to partner with the disciplinary societies and have been actively engaged with that. And if you want to kind of get a sense of what that looks like, Beth Cunningham, raise your hand, is in the audience, and she's with the physics group and has been working on this. So I asked Beth, how many physics departments are there? With physics and astronomy, 800. So when you begin to think of the scale that basically that we have to take on, it is non-trivial. Now, inside of that little box is a video. I'm not going to play it. You can go to the site and play it yourself, where essentially what we are trying to do is explain what it is that we have taken on. But in the interest of giving you the opportunity to ask whatever questions you have, I'm breezing right through it. So what have we done to date? We build links with Advanced HE, the home of Athena Swan. We have a memorandum of agreement. We've observed panel reviews. We have licensed, and we are licensing the materials so that we don't start from scratch. We cannot use what they have. Our legal systems are totally different, and they require some very onerous work because of the difference in our legal system. And going forward, we're going to share with them where we have a comparative advantage, and in that one of the areas where we have a comparative advantage is around the issue of intersectionality. We have been working on issues, for example, related to women of color since 1975. And that is a lot of history and a lot of experience of looking at these issues and how they play out. We have 3 parts to Sea Change: the Sea Change community, the Sea Change Institute, and the awards, the recognition structure. The Sea Change community, where we want to build a community not only of stakeholders, but also of practitioners. The community of practice is important because these are the people who are in the trenches actually trying to do the work. But the community of stakeholders, it's important to have business and industry reflecting their needs and their concerns, along with the colleges and universities, government agencies, nonprofits, civil rights and other equity facing groups, because all of us have to come to this together. We are partnering, as I indicated, with the disciplinary societies, and with organizations of colleges and universities. We've been in contact and working with the Association of American Universities, the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, ACE, American Council on Education, and we will keep adding them, the alphabet, in order to make sure that we all stay aligned. We've done outreach to higher education institutions at all levels, and to the donor community, which is an interesting thing when you talk to the donors. They want something like this. They want to invest in places that have healthy departments, but they don't know how to make those determinations. And so once there is a determination, they can use that to say who they are inviting into a solicitation. And I think that this particular aspect, because I do not expect that we will ever have an NIH saying you can't come in. But if you had a Gates or an HHMI or some of the private donors saying that we want to see your commitment, I think that you can begin to see change. I know, that was bad too. The Sea Change Institute is the next part. We've actually just gotten funding from for that from Carnegie Corporation. We want to provide support to all the institutions so that, in fact, everybody can be a goal. Everybody can be successful. And we believe that because we have this requirement because we have this requirement that institutions use evidence-based, research-based strategies in their plans of action, that we need a research community as well that is aligned to this. Not only a diversity research community, but also the discipline-based education research community that is in play, because a lot of these, we think that they're good practices, but we don't necessarily have the evidence base that we need in order to invest that kind of effort. And then the awards structure. We are piloting in 5 institutions. In about 6 weeks, we expect to see those. We have a lot of our prospective panel members in this room. We've developed materials and shared it with them. And prominently, we're addressing the legal complexities that are involved, because that's a major piece in terms of doing this in the U.S. Again, we would like Athena Swan. We're looking at bronze, silver, and gold, and each has a different level of requirement in terms of going to the next level. We have, again, the partnerships with the affiliates. We have 200 and something disciplinary affiliates and state and local academies of science. So we want the physicists to manage the physicists and the physics departments, and the chemists to manage the chemistry departments, because then it not only changes the department, but it changes the discipline. And I think that this notion of really looking to change culture is absolutely critical. Now, what are the challenges? I only have 2 slides left. One is challenges and one is opportunities, because one of the things you asked was, what do we learn from this process? The scale of our effort is massive, and we are going to have to think about scale at every step of the way. Should we regionalize this and put nodes in different places? There are all of these questions that we are looking at. The diversity of the universities and colleges, it includes 4-year, 2-year universities with medical schools and without, huge enterprises. How do you break that down? How do you look at something that is that massive? The wide variability and barriers that are field related. The natural resistance to change. Do you know the saying, nobody likes change but a wet baby? People don't want to change. They want to stay where they are. And so this means, how do you basically help them think about and embrace change? And this is a major issue. And then finding the money. In many cases, governments are putting the money in. For example, in Canada, it's the government that is putting the money in. We have to write grants just like everybody else. Yes, maybe some of them go to government, but we are also looking at the private donor community. So this is a massive undertaking. And then finally, selling a vision. We don't have a product, we have a vision. And it's going to require that somebody invest early on. We were fortunate to have the Heising-Simons Foundation, who got it in terms of a startup. So but that means that now we must move on if we're talking about maturing. And then finally, opportunities. We can build on the initiatives that have been taken to date, the investments from the National Science Foundation, the in its Advance and AGAP program and its new Includes initiative. We have a chance for true systemic change. And we need to be able to guide now more than ever. We're going to have to help guide the institutions in terms of the way they look at the legal structures. What can you do that is both effective and legally defensible? And those are real challenges. And so I thank you. This is progress to date. As they say, stay tuned.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. If you could just stay there. This is a wonderful opportunity, I think, for everyone to raise any questions they may have. And may I just remind everyone again, because I really like this part, you are co-chair of the Gender Advisory Board of the UN Commission on Science and Technology. That seems a pretty big platform. What do you see coming in and out? What kind of feedback do you get from there?
Well, you realize, of course, that the Commission is working on how science and technology can support development.
Yeah.
And our role is to provide a gender lens on that work. And quite frankly, it's the same thing with regard to, if you think about it, it's the same thing with regard to sea change. A lot of the work that is being done, the research that is being done, it's based on research agendas that were set oftentimes without diverse groups at the table.
Yeah.
And if they were at the table, you might have different research being done. I look, for example, at AI, artificial intelligence, and I look at the fact that a lot of the AI is in fact baking in bias. What do I mean by that?
Yeah.
I mean the fact that the massive imperfections of the facial recognition technology. I look at the use of AI in terms of sentencing policing, parole, all of the decision-making in terms of giving you mortgage or not, which advertisements men see versus women. I mean, all of this is these black box algorithms.
Yeah.
Now, how does all of this what does that have to do with that? You look at the departments. The women aren't there, the minorities are not there. So to the extent that you have a system that is inequitable, the inequalities basically move throughout not just that system, but the larger society as well. And that's one of the things that that's why this is important. I said to someone, you need a system like that so that 20 years later when someone is being considered for the Supreme Court, they have come through a structure where women and minorities are respected, where it's not okay to just brush over, the kind of inequalities that are inside of our institutions. These are massive issues.
Yes, that was a great one. In the middle there in the red? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm Alicia from North Carolina State University, and relating back to the report that came out from the American Academies for Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, showing that reporting techniques are not advancing our agenda to limit bad behaviors. So as we look to organizations such as you represent and others, what are some mechanisms we can use to advocate for better reporting, better response, and better resources without our victims being maybe mocked that we see in the news media today?
Well, I think I heard President Obama's Assistant Secretary of the Department of Education who put the regulations in place. And I said to her at that time, there is something wrong with a system that requires the victim essentially to take the responsibility for reporting. Now, you don't just get to that point. You edge your way to that point, tolerating incivility and the like. And I think that this notion about this larger issue of prevention is critical. I asked about the whole question of why aren't there site visits? Why aren't there regular check-ins with regard to these departments rather than waiting for somebody to come and report? Okay, that's a totally different kind of a structure. And if you think about it, what we're trying to build in here with regard to department level screening and assessment is a kind of a proactive looking ahead of time rather than depending on reporting.
Any more questions? Anyone from the audience? We've got time for one more. One I did want to bring up is in the morning session, we didn't really hear about sexual harassment at all and how that relates, and because we're talking about institutional funding and general ideas. But this idea that there are no consequences, or maybe there weren't any consequences before, how do we move that onto STEM? What are the consequences when there isn't diversity, apart from the public effect that for AI recognition, for example, that underperforms on females?
In this particular case, the only reason to actually look at this is to get positive recognition. See, this isn't a punitive thing, and you don't have to do it. It's voluntary. But if your peer institutions do it, you almost have to. Yeah. Because you look at yourself, at least in the US, as I said to somebody, because somebody asked me about North Carolina, And given all of the legislative and state rules down there, they asked about North Carolina and why would North Carolina want to go through the system. And I said, if Duke does, North Carolina has to. And that's just the way it is, because these institutions basically rate themselves or rank themselves based on their peers or on who they see as their competitors. So you use that kind of positive action in order to support positive action.
Okay. One final question. Norman. Oops, shit.
My name is Ella Ghosh. I work in the Norwegian Committee for Gender Balance and Diversity in Research, which is a national committee that the ministry has appointed. I would like to dwell on this consequence issue. We need more economists to look at the societal costs of subjects where women are in the bachelor level, the master's level, the doctoral level, and the postdoc level, and then don't continue. Sexual harassment, but active disencouragement from senior academic staff, or the lack of encouragement, might have something to say. There's a lot of research done about why women drop off. But the fact is that each doctoral candidate costs a lot of money. Each postdoc candidate costs even more.
Yes.
And that is a cost that society is carrying when very, very talented women are leaving mathematics, are leaving informatics, are leaving economics, law in our country at least. A lot of women go to the top, but then they don't go into the professor level because they stop after doctoral, postdoc. So this is actually a huge economic cost for many societies around the world. And I don't see a lot of numbers about what this
It's interesting that you should say that. Yes, the women themselves pay a huge cost, but you're also right that society pays a huge cost, okay, in terms of lost talent. And I mean, think about all of us when you're kicking people out of a field where you need solutions to major global problems that these women could perhaps provide, bringing diverse perspectives and insights. I don't know why we don't have more of this, but you should note the presence of women, or maybe I should say the absence of women in economics.
Yeah.
And I think that the other part is that what gets rewarded in economics? Which subfields get rewarded? Econometrics? I mean, the thing is that the whole system is in fact situated in such a way that it just holds itself exactly as it is. And if you do not disrupt, it will remain that way.
That's an excellent point to end on. Yes, if we don't disrupt. Thank you very much, Dr. Malcom. Thank you. That was wonderful. That was an inspiring talk.